Welcome to the Pages of Light podcast, your destination for discussions of popular fantasy and science fiction novels from a Christian worldview. My name is Tyler, aka Verum, and with me, as always, is Gabriel, aka the Quarantine Quartermaster. Welcome back to the podcast. How has your week been going?
It's been a good week at work. Just digging into a new project where I get to kind of like shape some like curriculum decisions that are being made for next year, and it's really fun to be working on something that someone has like chosen me for and asked me to do, instead of just like trying to be the loudest voice in the room. So I spent a lot of my youth doing that, but now people are asking me for my opinion, and I like that. That makes me feel recognized, like in the school. So nice. I'm happy with that.
Cool. Yeah, that's good.
How you doing, Aaron?
Yeah, I've had a pretty good week. We this week at church we launched a new like podcast kind of initiative called Orchard Hill Plus. So we got some new shows and stuff that we're planning to do with that, and so I've been busy working on that kind of stuff. So it's been fun to do. Like, I'd like to do content creation here like on the side, but now it's fun to kind of be in that kind of content creation world at work as well. So that's kind of a cool development, but it's a lot of work, so it's busy.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, make sure you go check out Pages of Light on social media. You can check out our website, pagesoflight.com, and see what's going on over there. And also make sure you go over to the YouTube channel so you can subscribe and check out the video version if you want to see our faces. And if you don't want to see our faces, then you can just keep listening on audio. That is completely fine. We accept that.
You don't have to look at us. No one's making you do it.
Right. That's why it's available on all platforms. All right. So in this episode, we are going to be discussing, we're going back to Vinland Saga, and this is going to be book 2 of the English release, and that's going to be chapters 17 to 21 of Vinland Saga, plus a small little bonus story at the end. And yeah, it's good to get back into Vinland Saga. I really did enjoy book 1, and yeah, just looking forward to see where this story goes, and what's going to happen to our characters and the decisions they make, and how their lives change throughout the story. So yeah, it's been good. Did you enjoy returning to Vinland Saga?
I did. You know what? It's good to have a book in hand that's easy to read, enjoyable. Like, the animation is good. I enjoy the storyline. We get a new character, Thorkel, who is a good villain here. And
a little crazy. Yeah, crazy.
Oh, for sure crazy. No doubt about it.
Yeah, cool. It's cool to do Vinland Saga because I met somebody recently and they are like, yeah, the anime Vinland Saga is really good. So I think he watched the anime, but he hasn't read the manga. So he was kind of telling me some of the stuff that he liked about the anime. And I was looking up in the wiki a little bit of like how the anime like parallels with the actual the written manga, and I think you have to get to about chapter 55, 56, and then when you get to there, then that's the whole first season of the anime.
Wow. So, okay.
Yeah, so we have a ways to go before we catch up to the anime.
We're like done episode 1 of the anime.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. And and I think season 2 of the anime is actually airing right now, if I'm not mistaken. I saw some story about it. So
very nice.
Hopefully after season 2
maybe a bonus episode.
Maybe a bonus episode. We'll see if we catch up to the anime quick enough. We'll see. Or we could at least do season 1 whenever we finish chapter 56 or something like that. So if you're looking forward to that, you can stay tuned. Maybe we'll look at doing that for the podcast. Let us know in the comments if you want to see that. Cool. So yeah, it's been good to get back into Vinland Saga. And as always, we're going to kick it off with our favorite quote. And I will start us off. So my favorite quote that I had this week is going to be on page 21, pretty early in the story. And it's a comment from like this old woman, mother person who kind of like rescues Thorfinn after he was being hunted by some English soldiers. And he kind of like she like nurses him back to health a little bit, and she's talking with her daughter, and she says, "Our Lord Jesus Christ would never forgive us for leaving an injured boy for dead, no matter where he may be from." And I don't know, I just kind of like this quote because it's just like a good kind of Christian ideal of, she's a Christian woman, and she sees this boy that's just, he's been injured, he got shot with an arrow, he's being hunted, and she feels like she needs to help him because it's what Jesus would have done for the boy. And so I just thought this was a good quote, and it's kind of an unfortunate situation, as we'll talk about, because she's trying to do the will of God, but then some bad things happen to her later on, which is just a reminder for us as Christians, like, you can still, do the right thing and do what God wants you to do, but that doesn't mean that good things are just always going to happen to you. Like, you're still going to have things that come into your life that are bad and that you do not want to happen, and that's just the reality that Satan is in the world, and he is using people for evil just as God is using people for good. And so, yeah, you can't get into this mindset where if I do good things, then God will do good things for me. That's kind of like prosperity gospel kind of thing. So
and
I'm not an
like
advocate
transactional
for that. Right,
with God.
transactional.
Like, I do this, you do that for me, and
Right.
you just kind of have to, like, if you get into that mindset, you're not really following God. You are like trading for his
Right.
favor, and like,
Right.
that doesn't
You're
lead to
trying to
good
barter.
places. Yeah, I'll do
Yeah.
this if you do that, sort of
Right.
thing.
Right. Yes, that's my quote, and we'll talk a little bit more about that because that's kind of like a major theme in this episode, or in this, not this episode, this this part of the manga, this section. So, yeah, that's my quote.
Oh, I thought you were talking about our episode, like our podcast
Oh
episode. I was
yeah,
like, yeah, it's
well,
in this. It's
it's
in this episode.
yeah. I said episode, then I was like, what is this, a TV show? I got mixed up in the head. So,
That's okay. I do that constantly.
All right. So what do you got first? What do you got for favorite quote?
Okay, so mine is this is, you're just like dropping in on like the Vikings like carrying on, and like you're just hearing the banter between men, and then you hear
Yep.
this line. Besides, I saw a wooden statue of that Jesus fellow in London Chapel. He looked like a right pansy. One swing from Thor's hammer would pound him flat. Um, so I don't think it's blasphemy to say that. So I'm hoping I'm not angering God just reading that quote. But I think God would want his servants to kind of like explain things to people who are learning to follow Christ. So I don't think it's a bad thing.
I think you're in the clear.
Yeah, I think I am too. But you don't want to make God angry.
That's
The
that's
fear
right.
of the Lord is the start of wisdom.
That's
Let's
right.
always fear the Lord. Okay. So I chose this quote because, I've heard pastors say, and I totally agree with this, that like Christianity is not like a likely story. Like, if
Right.
you think about the gods of like ancient Greece and Rome and like the Viking gods, like, we look to power and everything. And then you see Jesus on the cross dying for the sin of the world,
Right.
and it just turns everything on its head. Like the expectation that, God will come, and through his might and through his divine justice, he will crush the enemies underfoot and, destroy them. But God came with love and destroyed the ultimate evil, and has won the battle for all time for our souls, and has given himself up to us because he
Right.
loved us so dearly.
Yep.
And it's such like like, people get so obsessed with like the way things look, and like if you look at it that way, like, you can't believe God came to earth like as a human, and then like lived a perfect life, and then died this horrible death at the end of it. Like, it's just such an unlikely story, and it's true, and that's like how God has saved the world. It's like, I mean, Christianity, like that is an extreme claim. I mean, there is a reason why the Bible is polarizing for people.
Yep.
And and this is our faith. This is what we believe, that Jesus Christ died for our sins, and because of the grace of God, we get to go to heaven. And when they look at, I don't know how it goes, but like when God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit like review your soul, like they're gonna see the good works that Jesus has done in our stead.
Right.
And we still have committed sin, but yeah. So
Right.
I just wanted to use this quote to highlight that part of Christianity, that like God did not come down and crush his enemies underfoot. He gave
Right.
himself up. He sacrificed himself because he loved us so much.
Right.
And that's the kind of God that we want to follow, and that we
Right.
do follow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good quote, and that's a good word, and that's just thinking about like that's partly some of the reasons why like the Jews expected Jesus to be more of a conquering type figure, like what you were talking about. That's what they were expecting him to be, and that what they wanted him to be, and I think that's part of the reason why they rejected him, because like they were like, you're not the person who works who you're supposed to be, essentially, and they're still waiting for that Messiah to come, and yeah, it's just crazy to think like that's like after all the prophecies and the things that happened in the Old Testament and Isaiah and Ezekiel and all the things that was said about Jesus the Messiah, and they just missed it. And yeah, it's unfortunate, but that's the way that it was supposed to happen, and that's the way that God has planned it. So we just have to trust in his vision. So yeah.
I want to jump in. I've been listening to, so my morning routine is I jump on Marco Polo on the start of my ride, and I check in with my wife and my friends, and then I put on Pastor Mike Winger. That's like where I've been for like 2 weeks now. So this is probably from him, but he was saying how they analyze. He's an apologist, which explains to people why Christianity is the right way. And he was just saying how they like took the prophecies that like Jesus was supposed to fulfill, and they tried to calculate the odds of this actually like happening on Earth.
Yes.
And the number was so astronomical that they decided to like just go with like 17 or something of like the like I don't know, dozens and dozens of predictions about the things that he would do.
Right.
And they're like, or maybe this was our Pastor Kurt, like if you took like a grain of sand, like and covered all of like Texas, and like
Right.
you asked someone to like go in blindfold
Yep.
and like grab this one piece of sand out of like across the entirety of Texas,
Right.
like that's how likely like those 17 or something.
Right.
So I wish that I didn't have like my source, like I wish I could give you the source of where I read that. I'm sure if you do some research you can figure it out, but just like that astronomical of like of like the likelihood of fulfilling all of these different prophecies. Just like there we go. Like how can you miss that it's the Messiah? But
Yeah.
you know what? We don't have to miss that because he is the Messiah. There you go.
He is indeed. All right, cool. Those are some good quotes there. If you have a favorite quote, of course, please leave it down in the comments. Love to have a discussion with you guys down there, and what you thought it was important about that quote, or how it spoke to you. So please let us know. And yeah, so now we're just going to jump into some book discussions. So as I said, we're doing chapters 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21, and then the bonus story at the end with Ylva. So we're going to open up with chapter 17. This is called England 180, or not 18. I'm jumping a few hundred years there. 1008 AD. And so we just open up here with some scenes with the Vikings, and they're invading England. And we see Thorfinn, and he is on the run. He got shot with an arrow in his like shoulder area, and he's just running away. There's dogs chasing him down, and he kills one or both of the dogs. I think we see a little. It says like "yeep," "yip" or something like that. "Yipe." And so he's kind of on the run. He passes out at some point, and then we meet this like little local family. They're just kind of looks like they're doing their laundry or something, and they see him just laying in the side of this river on a log, and so they take him back to their little house, and they put him in bed. They bandage up his shoulder wound or arm wound. They give him some food, and Thorfinn is like, he like does not seem very thankful. He's kind of just like, wow, I'm here. I'm gonna eat their food, and then they're gonna like bathe him because he's got like these fleas in his hair and stuff. It's kind of a comical scene.
Yeah, I thought it was funny with the fleas like
Right.
popping off of him and the daughter being like, "I'm itchy, mom."
But yeah, so Thorfinn is just kind of like accepting all of the good graces from this family, and they're sitting outside. And this is where we get my quote. We're like, we need to help the guy because the our Lord Jesus Christ would never forgive us for just leaving him to die and all this kind of stuff. So they help him out, and there's an English soldier that shows up to the house, and he's like, we're looking for this a boy who is a spy, and they're just sitting on this stone wall. And Thorfinn has like his knife in his back. He's ready to pounce if this old lady gives him up, but she doesn't, which is surprising. She decides she's going to cover for him, and she's going to say that this is my son John is my youngest. And Thorfinn's like, what the heck? I don't understand what's happening here. But he's just kind of like, all right, that's fine. But we kind of find out a little bit later in the next scene here that I guess she had previously lost a son, and so I think she's trying to like, because her son used to be named John, and I guess he died because the daughter says he can't ever replace John, you know. So it seems kind of like at the beginning she's doing it for like an altruistic motive, like she wants to do the right thing, but there's also seems to be some sort of like personal, almost selfish reason, like she wants to have a son again that is like helping her around the house in a way.
Correct. Yeah.
So it seems it's kind of interesting in that way where she's doing the right thing on the outside, but internally she has an inner motive of why she wants Thorfinn to stick around. And it's actually funny, like whenever Thorfinn later in this scene, he kind of runs away. He takes like a torch, and she opens the door, and she actually just calls out John. Like she just calls him his.
Oh yeah.
He calls him like her dead son's name. So she's already like in her head like adopted him like as her son in a way, which is just really interesting of like how quickly that shift happened in her mind. So, but yes, so Thorfinn kind of just like betrays them. He lights the signal to get the Vikings to come into the village, and there's a little bit of a battle scene. The soldiers show back up, and he kills them. He's got these. We always comment on Thorfinn's crazy eyes, so there you can get some crazy eyes from Thorfinn there.
Oh yeah.
So
Yep.
we always like some Thorfinn.
Check
crazy
out that
eyes.
page.
But it's interesting because like, he's in this crazy eye mindset, and then there's like this image where he sees the woman, in like at a distance, and it like shocks him out of his kind of rage. And it almost gets him killed because this guy takes a swipe at him. So yeah, it's just kind of interesting. And so he leads the Vikings in, and it seems like he's kind of disappointed because he wanted them to run away, because he was like, you guys helped me, so I kind of wanted to tell you to run away. But I mean, they're not going to just run away from their village because they don't know why they would do that. And yeah, I mean, it's implied that either it doesn't like show them getting killed, like the woman, but I'm gonna assume that like most of the people in the village got killed. Are you making that assumption too in this
So
chapter?
there's this thing that like I've seen in like some like manga or anime, and so like at the end of the chapter you see the broken comb, and the comb is from that woman, and I think that symbolizes her death.
Okay, right.
Because it's shattered, and like the trust that she had for him was shattered, and so she lost her life. So I think that's the symbol that's being conveyed there.
Okay.
I've seen that in like other things, like in the movie Milan, like she takes her father's armor and leaves her comb as a symbol of like I was here, and then the fact that like this comb is broken, that kind of indicates the breaking of that person. So
Interesting.
um,
Okay.
yeah, so it's just like something that symbolizes the person, and then it's no longer whole; it's broken. So
Right.
I think that's what that's alluding to there.
Yeah.
And
What did you think of
so
this
I have
section?
some thoughts,
Yeah,
but
go for it.
so are we going to revisit this scene when we talk about uh, good things happening to innocent people, or are we going to jump into that right now? Because I got some thoughts on.
Yeah, we could just do that major theme if right now if you want, because that's mainly this scene here is mainly from that major theme. So yeah, we can just jump
Okay, you
into it.
set it up, and I want to add some thoughts about like her behavior and how that kind of like changes outcomes. So yeah, go
Right.
ahead. You set it up here.
Yeah, so the major theme that I had, one of the major themes I put in for this episode is basically this scene, which is what I just called "Bad Things Happen to," and I put this in quotes in my notes. So it says, "quote good slash innocent people," because, um, in terms of like God's like judgment, like nobody is good or innocent in the eyes of God based on their own
Correct.
actions, right? So that's why I put it kind of in quotes. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, so this old mother, she takes in Thorfinn, she heals him, she cleans him, protects him from the soldiers, and then Thorfinn, just leads the Vikings to their village, and they all get attacked, and a lot of people die, and so she did the right thing, and she was just like an innocent bystander, but still things happened in her life that were less than ideal, even though she was a good person, and this is kind of a topic that comes up a lot in like Christian apologetics of like why do bad things happen to good people or innocent people, um, and so yeah, that was just kind of a theme that we see in this part of the book where she does the right thing but bad things still happen to her. So I have some. Did you want to jump in first, or do you want me to go to the Bible passages?
Um, what? Yeah. So I have some thoughts. I don't want to lose them. So
Okay, go for it.
again, so I'm going to first say that she did not handle well. So it's tough. So I just listened to a teacher teaching by Mike Winger about lying, and he does
Right.
this like 20 questions thing, and it's like, is it okay to tell white lies? And
Mm,
he's responding to this question, and he's saying, I don't think that we should call them white lies. And he like, he's a pastor, he knows the Bible very well, and he says, the only time I have seen like lying condoned in the Bible is when it is a life or death situation. That if and that's why this makes it tough right here because on the mom because what I was going to call her on is like
right.
well two things like one her like not like paying heed to authority
Right.
like God endorses like the governments that are there to like serve the people, and
Mm-hmm.
then a government official is coming up as like a knight or patrolman or whatever, just saying like we're looking for this kid, he's dangerous.
Right.
And she's getting good intel from this guy, and she's saying I think
Yeah.
the
And
thing, the
she and
sin
she's
act.
she sees his knife as well. Like he's getting ready. Like he knows.
Yeah. And then but she's choosing what she wants, you know.
Yes.
And then when you talked about how she's got a dead son, and I think, it's this loneliness inside of her and kind of like her desperation to like have that filled.
Right.
Um, and, she is making a choice to ignore good advice. Okay. And then second thing is she's lying. She's saying that I haven't seen him, that, we don't know where he is. So there's like, we're wrapping sin into this exchange, and, Thorfinn's, she doesn't know, but she is choosing like to serve her own needs.
Right.
Um, but yeah, going back to what I was saying about Mike Winger was just like he's like the only time that lying is condoned in the Bible is to save a life. And I can't remember what passage he quoted, but he was just saying that like someone was being questioned and they lied about knowing if like someone was there and it saved their life. And he was like, he brought real life examples in of like Anne Frank, hiding in her house,
Right.
like escaping, you know, murder by concentration camp, um, and the people who protected her and kept her safe,
Right.
um, like that was condoned in the Bible, which kind of blows my mind. But yeah, I try to be like, and I also know that millionaires, like I've read books like The Millionaire Mind or something, and it's like people who are very successful are like fanatical truth tellers, and
Mm-hmm.
like I try to model my behavior on that. And I think when I was younger in my 20s, it was like I want to be a millionaire, and now I'm like I want to follow God and not lie, because
Right.
I think when you lie, you sow little bits of chaos into the world, and when you are truth, like a truth teller, and what you say like turns out to be true, you are building stability and building like a
Right.
ground where things are trustworthy. So I want to be on board for telling the truth all the time. So yeah, I try and not even do the white lies.
Right.
You know, I try and try to find something nice to say, even if it's like totally off topic. I'm like, you know what, this conversation, this food's really good.
um, yeah, it's also interesting with this scene because the question comes up like, was her decision the good decision? Was it the right decision? And some
Hmm.
people might argue, I mean, it was good that she like helped him and nursed him back to health. So like that part of her decision was good, but then it was a bad
Hmm.
decision to not give him up to the police essentially, or to the soldier,
Yeah.
um, because he she knows that this is who they're looking for, and it's clear because Thorfinn's got his knife. He's ready to pounce. He knows that if the woman gives him up, then he has to attack that soldier immediately. And so, but she covers for him, and you have to believe that is she's. I think she's maybe like holding out hope that like maybe he's in over his head, like he made a bad decision, or like she's trying to like justify it in her mind of like he's just he just he's too young to like be accountable. Maybe that's going through her mind. Like he doesn't deserve like what the English person, or maybe he didn't do all the things that the person in authority is saying that he did. Um, so all of these types of things could be going through her head, and her trying to justify why she's going to not listen to the authority figure who says we're looking for this person who is very dangerous, and he's on the run. So uh, was her decision good or not? I mean, it's up for you to kind of make that decision on your own as you read through the story. So yeah, it's just interesting. Um, so yeah, I don't know how well that actually fits in now that we kind of talk it through of like how that fits into like bad things happening to good people, because maybe on a superficial kind of look at this scene in this little story here, you're like, that was a good person, she did the right thing, and then she got backlash, or some bad things happened to her, but um, was she actually doing the right thing? Maybe not. So
Yeah, I think you're right, Tyler. I think you hit it on the head. She's not doing the right thing according to Christianity. Like, she's not like paying attention to the warnings that are being given to her. She is choosing like I feel like her blinders are on. She's just committed to like
right.
having like she's looking at Thorfinn as her son, and she's protecting her son, and not even seeing that this is a different person, that this is someone who could be dangerous. She just sees a boy that she wants to take care of and
Right.
protect, and to like,
Right.
you know,
treat
because
treat it
she's
as her own
lonely.
son. Yeah.
Yeah, treat as her own son, because she's lonely, she's sad, she lost her son, she loved her son, and now here's someone that she can love.
Right.
But it's Thorfinn's, and he's got the crazy eyes, and she doesn't even know. She doesn't even know
Not the crazy eyes. Oh my
the
goodness.
crazy eyes.
Um,
So yeah, I mean that's what happens when you look at Christianity. The bar is always so high, and we are
right,
never going to jump over that bar. That
right,
is that is our fate as Christians to know that we are going to fall short every single day of what God expects us to do.
right,
Every single day, sometimes every single minute,
right,
depending on the day.
right,
Um, and that's just the reality we have to go with. But we also have to live with joy and hope in our heart because
right.
of the good news of the gospel.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, as a kind of maybe a final thought, like this is a good scene to kind of remind us to maybe check our hearts, like whenever we're. I think sometimes you can go into certain situations, and you're like, I'm doing the right thing in this situation, and you can tell yourself that you're doing it for a good reason and for a good motive, and you're doing what God wants you to do, but maybe you know deep down in your soul that you're doing this for a specific selfish reason, and you want some other outcome to happen, but you maybe almost lie to yourself about trying to like taking the altruistic high
Oh
road
yeah.
kind of a thing. And so maybe this is just an opportunity to like, when you find yourself in those situations, like really check your heart and just ask yourself, like, am I doing this really for the right reasons, or am I doing this because I want to get something out of it? Um,
Amen. That's a
so
good thought. And like just to like give people examples, like doing something for like the achievement of it, doing something for
right.
like besting someone else,
Mm-hmm.
or like I'm doing this better than you could do it, bragging rights sort of things, or doing it for like reciprocity. Like if I do this thing, this big thing, then I will get something back big for me.
Right.
And those are like just three examples that come to mind that very easily, like your altruistic acts or behavior are actually driven by selfish motives.
Right. Yeah. Cool.
That's a good
So
word.
that was a good word. Yeah, so that was a major theme. So we won't revisit that one later on. I don't know, it might be a good idea to kind of just do the major themes as we talk about the book discussion. I feel like maybe that might flow a little bit better instead of doing all of the book discussion and then doing all of the major themes afterwards.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe
I thought that worked well.
we'll play around with it. But yeah, so that's basically the chapter 17, and now we're gonna move into chapter 18, where we get basically a 5 year jump forward in time, and Gabe's gonna chat about chapter 18 for us.
Yeah, and also just a side note. So when you were introduced to Thorfinn's, he's got his outfit on that is like different from like all the other Vikings that are around
Yes,
him, and like this is the origin story
yes.
of the outfit that
He's
he wears.
still
He
he's
got
still wearing the outfit that the old lady gave him.
yep, yep.
I did notice that.
5 years later, he's
That
still
is
wearing
interesting.
it.
That is actually interesting because maybe like that's like a piece of him that he was like disappointed in himself maybe, and that like clothing is a reminder of maybe not
I
to act
mean,
that way
you
again,
said
or
because yeah, he does get kind of like shell shocked by seeing her,
right,
like him realizing like, oh, my actions are leading to like
right,
her friends and family getting destroyed,
yes,
and like she also I look, yeah, the broken comb
yep,
right here at the end of chapter 17. I'm pretty sure that means she died.
yeah.
So maybe that is part of the reason why he still wears it. Okay, so how are we going to pronounce this king's name? King.
I was calling him King Swen.
Okay, that's what I just came up with, but I pronounced it a whole bunch of different ways like a few minutes ago. So, Swen? Yeah.
Swen. We're gonna go with Swen. If I go to the
All
wiki, maybe I'll have a different answer for you. Maybe they have a
right.
phonetic
Well,
spelling. So you can continue, and I'll do a
yeah,
search for us.
yeah, see if you can. Okay, so we open up and the Vikings are in England and they are looting. So we have scenes of them um, like pillaging, killing innocents like women and children, hanging people from trees. There's a bare naked lady hung over like this guy's shoulder. He's obviously taking her somewhere that she doesn't want to go. And then we have this siege that's going on. So the Vikings are in their Viking boats and they are mounting an attack. And we have Ascalon He is the only one on the Danish side because he thinks that they'll win. So,
He's
um,
just in it for the money, because if they win, then he gets the plunder, or part of the plunder.
yep,
Typical
Askeladd's
Askeladd.
always looking for the money. That Askeladd, and then he's got Thorfinn's on his ship, and he says, "Get me Thorkel's head." And so Thorkel is a new character, a new villain that we're going to be introduced. Um, and Thorfinn agrees, but he just wants his duel with Askeladd. Um,
I like this because we're getting more details about like the history of their duel, and so, and it's uh, interesting actually because he says that. Let me guess, you want the usual? So it's implied that this has been a recurring thing over and over again. So there's obviously been lots more situations where Askeladd needs something done. Thorfinn says, "I'll do it if you give me a duel or whatever." So we don't know all the history of those, or how many of those he's succeeded, or how many duels he's actually had with Askeladd, because he's obviously failed all of them up to this point. Um,
and that's very believable because
right.
it's like,
He's a kid.
yeah, kid, and then from earlier, like 5 years earlier,
Right.
you know, so he's obviously not strong, and like like Askeladd is a seasoned warrior.
Right.
And Askeladd's never really worried about Thorfinn's. He's like, yeah, whatever.
Yep.
Um, all right, so enter Floki. So Floki is the one who kind of got Askeladd to kill Thor's in Volume 2 of Vinland Saga. And so
Yeah.
Floki is now the envoy, and he wants to talk to Thorkels. And then Thorkel is huge. Like he's just like a towering beast
Yeah.
over like every other man. So he's like, I mean, he has to be like 9 feet tall. This
9 feet. That's pretty tall.
like, look at this. I mean, he's serious. Like, look at this page. Look how much taller he is. Look at him standing over all these people.
Oh yeah, I guess now that you showed me that picture, I didn't. I kind of just glossed over that whenever I read it. But yeah, I mean he's like a Goliath from the
Yeah,
Bible.
he's enormous. And and I'm gonna get into the tropes here because I've watched, like in high school I was in Dragon Ball Z. I was watching that show like all the time. That was like,
Yeah.
a lot of things come out of like anime. But anyway, so like it's so funny that there's like these tropes of like these guys that are like, "Hey, I'm like happy to see you, but I'm also like a crazy killer man," like it's funny how there's like have this like two-sided thing going on.
Right.
Anyway, so Floki tries to ask Thorkel to surrender. Thorkel declines because he says it's more fun to fight against the Danish instead of um, the English.
Because
So
he says the English are weak, basically.
yeah,
He's like he's bored essentially, and he just wants to fight against the
yep,
Danish, which just kind of gives you an insight into his character. Like he's not loyal to anybody. He's just kind of, and we kind of get later on in another chapter we get more information about like his views about like the afterlife, and like he just wants it so like if he dies he faces the greatest foe that was possible for him to face, and that way he'll ensure that he gets to Valhalla. That's kind of
hmm
his religious mindset. So
yeah. Vikings want to die with their weapon in their hand. I've seen many movies where like the kindness to the Viking is like as they lay dying is to find their weapon and give it to them, and they clutch it to their chest as they die,
yes,
and then they go to Valhalla,
yes,
taken there by the Valkyries, I think.
yes.
So
Short side quest. If you've seen or you want a good Viking show, The Last Kingdom, really good. It's on Netflix.
yeah, Jenna watches it.
Oh
She really
yeah,
likes it.
Uhtred, son of Uhtred. Because I remember a scene where a character gets killed, and the girl comes in and finds him dead, but he doesn't have a sword in his hand, and she's
Mhm.
like, oh, no, this is like the worst thing that could possibly happen. And she's trying to find a sword and like give it to him, but he's long dead. So that was a heartbreaking scene for that character. Um,
Yeah.
Sorry,
And
continue. Side quest
yeah,
complete.
that's okay. That's good. Yeah, and Thorkel's is just like he throws this giant boulder, um, like at Floki's ship, um, and
Evade.
sends them. Yeah, and then he sends them packing, and Floki has to go back to King Swain. Is that what
Swain.
we said?
Yeah,
Swain.
there wasn't any
Um,
phonetic spelling in the wiki, so
thanks. Okay. Um, and he just really looks like the king looks like dejected, like in this he's like slumping over in like the throne, and they
right.
have this like animation where you don't see his face. It's like all darkened out, and
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like hidden in shadow. You know he's got a big beard. He looks older, but he just seems unengaged. But he tells Loki to resume the siege. So you have this great battle going on. The ramparts that Thorkel's men are on is just like this long, long bridge over the water, and it's got a bunch of like support structures underneath, and it's just packed to the brim with people, and they're fighting against the Viking ships with like the dragons on the front of them.
Mm-hmm.
There's arrows flying everywhere, and everyone's fighting. And again, we see Thorkel's like power. He's throwing like pieces of wood that are the size of like boat masts like into the boats and like sinking
Like
boats.
if he went to a
Like
lumber yard and they just like chopped up some trees and they just like threw the massive logs on there, like
mhm.
those size logs, he's just chucking them.
um and so we get, you know, Thorfinn's has always been a force of nature when it comes to fighting. Um and so he's got like half crazy eyes or like super focus eyes on Thorkel, and then
Right.
we have you know, him challenging Thorkel. So he like runs off his boat with his super dash, and then we have the Thorkel's and Thorfinn fight, which is pretty cool. So Thorfinn is like agile, and he's got his knives. He's like dual wielding, and Thorkel's is
He's like 4 foot high,
yeah, and Thorkel is like I'm gonna use
double his
this
height.
double his height, like using like a giant piece of wood to fight. And so like, you know, Thorfinn's is like thinking to himself, you know, the only way for me to win this is to be fast
Right.
and to not get caught. And now that um, Thorfinn has opened or like has closed the distance to Thorkel and they've you know they are ready to have a true battle here.
Let's duel.
And this is where Tyler's gonna pick up the story.
Yes. Um, I did just thinking about this kind of fight scene. This reminds me of. Got to get a Lord of the Rings reference in here. This reminds me of the scene in the Return of the King where Eowyn fights the Witch King of Angmar, and the Witch King's like this towering black rider figure, like the essence of evil, and he's got this like massive like it's not a mace. Not sure what weapon he has. It's like a ball and chain essentially. It's got like a handle and then a big chain and then this massive spike ball in the end.
I think
Is it
it's
like
called a Morning Star.
is it a Morning Star? I didn't know if the Morning Star had a chain on it. I'm blanking on what it's actually called, but Gabe will do a quick search for us. But that's what it reminded me of because that figure is like super towering. And the Witch King is using like a large weapon and it's more forceful, but Eowyn is more agile and she's dodging and trying to do more nimble acts instead of to combat him. That's kind of what's happening in this chapter. Is it's just a long kind of fight scene most of this chapter, and Uh, Thorkel has like these like really massive punches, kind of like Thor's. He's got that. He just like fights hand to hand, and he's got super strong fists and punches. I don't think he actually has a weapon, does he? Now that I'm thinking about it, he has a little knife on him.
He's always got his little knives.
But I don't think he was actually using it. It was mostly just like hand to hand combat. Um,
Oh, are you talking about Thorkels?
yeah, Thorkel. I don't think he actually used a weapon. He just had
Sorry, I keep throwing an S on the end of his name.
oh yeah. But it gets to a point where like Thorfinn thinks that he's kind of got under his guard, and he sneaks behind him, and then brings up his knife, and he's gonna get it right up into his neck, and then Thorkel just like puts his hand in front of the knife, and the knife goes like straight through into his hand, and he blocks his knife with his hand. It's just this kind of a crazy scene. Like he's just so powerful. Like he could just stop the knife with his hand, and it doesn't even like phase him almost. It seems like, and because of this, like he just like grabs Thorfinn and whips him around. It's like that scene in the first Avengers movie where the Hulk grabs Loki and like just like flings him back and forth. Kind of that's kind of what's happening in this scene, which is pretty funny. And Thorfinn realizes that he's been bested. He's not going to be able to kill him because he's gotten roughed up pretty bad and he's kind of wounded. So he tries to escape his grip, and to do that, he like flings his knife up and cuts off some fingers. And again, like he doesn't even like Thorkel like does not even care about any of these wounds. He's like dagger through the hand, fingers cut off, and he's still smiling at the end of this battle, which is like he is like a true warrior. He just loves like fighting, and that's just like all he's about. And so he wants to know Thorfinn's name, and he says, "I'm Thorfinn, son of Thors." And he's like, "Thors? Is that the Thors that I think I'm talking, that I think I am, or that I think about?" I can't even talk. And before he can answer, he just jumps off the side of the bridge back into the water. And so they let him go. And yeah, I mean, it was a cool fight scene. There was a lot of fun action there, and just seeing kind of the reaction.
Yeah, I like the animation for that
Right.
part of the book.
Yeah, and just kind of seeing Thorkel's reaction to all of the moves that Thorfinn was doing, and he was like, "Wow, impressive!" It was almost like he was just kind of having fun with Thorfinn and just kind of like seeing what he could do. I don't feel like he was actually in danger. Like he was not fearful of his life. Sort of like Askeladd whenever he duels him, like in the first book. Like there was parts where he kind of got close maybe, but Askeladd was definitely the better fighter, and you could tell. And the same kind of situation here with Thorkel is he's just a better fighter. He's way more experienced. He's way taller. He's stronger. He's more powerful. Just all of these things. And so he does not win. And so he escapes. There's a scene where we get to go back to King Swen here, where they're like, we're going to have to wait more time. It's going to be like 6 months to a year for the siege to last and to get to take over the town. And King Swen is like, we're not going to wait that long. We're going to go focus on other parts of the war. And so he decides he's just going to leave the city essentially with most of his army. And instead he's going to leave his son, named Prince Canute, to kind of be in charge of the siege with a smaller force of soldiers to just kind of keep the pressure on the city. And they get one of the king's advisors gives him some pushback, like the prince isn't ready, he's too young, kind of all this stuff. But there's an interesting quote he has here because which I bring up in one of my other major themes of just like the inferiority of Christianity, which is mentioned multiple times throughout this part of the book, where people are just kind of talking down to Christians and what they believe in, and they're like elevating the idea of the Danes and the Norse gods, and devaluing the idea of Christianity and Jesus. And so there's a quote here where he says, King Swen, this is him talking about his son, and he says, "Precisely why he must carry it. I do him no favor in coddling him. He has grown too soft for a man of his station. Perhaps it is his Christian upbringing." And I guess there's kind of just like this, as Christians, we're supposed to be like loving, and we're not supposed to be we're not supposed to seek out, fights and battles, and we're not really supposed to be. We need to be prepared and prepared to defend ourselves, but we're not like looking for those fights. We're not looking for those engagements, and so I guess that's kind of the idea of like maybe Prince Canute isn't someone who's going out and seeking fights with people, and maybe that in his father's eyes makes him soft. So I don't know. Do you want to jump in here at all? Do you have any comments?
Um, yeah, I mean, I just agree with what you said, and like, yeah, it is tough to just like balance like knowing that we are supposed to be like peacekeepers, like,
Right.
but God also wants to have us to have a backbone. He wants us to have boundaries, and that's sometimes like lost in our teachings because
Mm-hmm.
it's hard. I mean, you have to do a lot of introspection and like deep like reflection on like what you believe, and then like because only then can you make your stand because you will know what you believe and why you believe it. And so yeah, I think that it's because like the general message is like you're supposed to be kind to others. It's hard to know when is that moment to stand up and take a stand.
Right.
And that's kind of how he's saying like Christians are soft here. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of hard to coach.
Yeah.
I don't have good answers for that just yet, but hopefully I will. I'll be able to tell my kids those things so
Yeah.
that they won't have to. They'll know it a lot earlier in life than I knew it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the hope. Help your kids know things earlier than you did. So it's part of parenting. Yeah, so that's the scene we get there with Prince Canute and Swen, and so he's going to be watching over the siege. And then just kind of towards the end of this chapter, we get some scenes with Thorfinn kind of re-arriving back with the army, and Askeladd was like, "I thought you were dead," essentially. And so he's got like a dislocated shoulder, it looks like, from being whipped around by Askeladd and thrown around, and
By Thorkel.
by Thorkel, sorry. And he like pops his shoulder back in, and then he has this interesting line at the very end of this chapter. He basically just says that they're all madmen, and that he says, "What's so fun about war?" And then that's the end of this chapter. But then we kind of get a scene at the beginning of the next chapter where he's remembering, or he's having a dream of his homeland. So it kind of points to this scenario where Thorfinn finds himself in. Like, he wants to get his revenge on Askeladd, and that's what he's driven by. But he does not really want to be here, it seems like, because he says, "What's so fun about war?" He's just trying to. He's basically just doing everything he can to get his revenge, and then once he's got that revenge, he's probably just he wants to just bail and go do something else. I don't think he's gotten to the point where he really loves what he's like. He isn't like Askeladd, and he isn't like Thorkel, who just really want to be warriors, and he's kind of seeing the bad sides of war. And yeah, I don't know. So that seems to me what he's thinking about in that last scene in this chapter.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean his motivation, like his entire reason for being has become this revenge, and it's taking and we're gonna have this encounter in chapter 20 Ragnarok where Thor's is going to challenge Thorkel. So I'll pick up the storytelling. So chapter 20 Ragnarok, we open on green pastures. Thorfinn's is a kid again, and he sees his dad, and he's going to run over, and they're going to have this nice father-son kind of moment. And Thor's is going to challenge Thorfinn's about like his family, and like it goes from this like kind of happy sunlit scene, and then there's like a change, and they do this thing in the manga where like they like sometimes when things are going on they don't show someone's face. Like King uh,
Yeah, Swen.
Swen. Thank you. I keep
There's a lot
thinking
of
of it
names,
as
yeah, and so many
Swen.
people named Thors. Thor,
Yeah.
Thorkel, Thorfinn, Thors.
Yeah.
So
Um, yeah. So uh, Thor's is basically like um, challenging him because he was like, "You need to go home and take care of your family," and Thor's is recognizing that um, Thorfinn has put like revenge at the top of his list, above being a member of the family, not going back to his mom and his sister.
but
Um,
this is a dream, so this is his own subconscious telling him this. So this is,
mhm.
so
Yeah,
like he deep down he knows this is true. It's kind of like what we said earlier. Like you may tell yourself that you're doing this for a good reason, but deep down you have like that inside yourself you have a different motive for doing something. So,
yeah.
um,
And I just want to like highlight the black eyes going on
right, of Thor's.
in this picture. If you're looking on YouTube, you can see like they show him with these blacked out eyes, and that's kind of like a trope. And it kind of reminds me of the Hollow Knight here. So it's a 3D print that I did. Hollow Knight is an excellent game, and its sequel is coming out, Silk Song. Bring it back, camera. There you go.
Come on, focus.
Yep. Um, and I think it just like kind of shows like because Thor's is acting like I think Thor's would think this, but like he kind of like goes rigid and like his eyes go dark, and it's kind of like this big
Right.
change in mood.
And
Um,
like even in the next scene lower down in the second panel where we see Thor's, his eyes are still black. Whenever
mhm,
he's running, the village, father, we're under attack, and his eyes are still black.
mhm.
Um, yeah,
And yeah, and Thor, my cat just fell off my desk. Um, so we flashed back to like the village as you mentioned, and it's under attack. And then Thorfinn just relives Thor's getting filled full of arrows, just as Boromir gets filled full of arrows.
yes, Lord of the Rings references, bring them all in.
um, so, and then at the end of this like dream sequence, like Thorfinn's is like, "Father," like reliving that visceral moment where he watched his dad's life stolen from him.
Yep.
And then he wakes up in a barn. And that's kind of like
In a
the,
cold sweat.
yeah. So now we're in the barn. This is older Thorkel's. Sorry,
Thorfinn.
Thorfinn. Yep. There you go.
You're adding S's onto all their names.
I'm sorry. Thank you for calling me out on that. Thorfinn. Um, so we wake up in a barn and there's a bunch of Vikings over there, and they are, you know, not to sugarcoat it. If you have kids listening, now is the time to pause. Skip forward. 3. They're raping a woman in this barn,
Right.
and they're saying things like, they're saying lewd things about like what's going on, and then they're like saying to Thorfinn like, "Hey, you need to come join in the fun." And Thorfinn is not about that life, and he just kind of like, you know, they think that he looks down on them, and I don't know if it's that. It probably is a little bit of that, but I just also don't know if he just doesn't approve. Like we don't really know
Right.
why he's not partaking in these sins of the flesh that
Right.
the Vikings are very comfortable with, like
Mm-hmm.
forcing themselves on women, which is like
Yeah. Well,
egregious.
he just had a dream of his father telling him to go home and take care of his family. And I mean, he has a sister. I mean, this girl doesn't look like she's that old, so
Right.
I mean, it could be like I'm supposed to be back home helping my family and my sister, and you know, this
And
is
here I
odd.
am with all
Right.
these Vikings, and like he's essentially helping them do this. Like he's on their
Right.
side.
Yes.
and it's to motivate his own revenge. Um, so he walks out, and then we're in the larger. The Vikings are feasting after they've conquered this town, and they're having all this banter and just talking and carrying on. And then we have the the information that the men are talking about is that Thorkel is no longer in London, and he's like, or no, that he's still in London, and that the main force of the Viking army has departed. So they are like a contingent of like 100 men under Askeladd, and they're just like taking their time. They're not, Askeladd always runs kind of like a loose ship. He's like, yeah, do what you want. Like, we're going to stay here until we get all the things we need. Then we'll go catch up with other people.
Right.
And then while all this is going on, we have a fight break out between Ake and Tor. And they're just fighting over like some like disagreement / insults like that have been passed between those two. And then we're gonna flash to Thorfinn, who is lonely and reflecting on his father's death. He's out in the field. He's left the Vikings to their things, and he's being introspective. He just relived in a dream like his dad dying again. And while he's out in the field, he bumps into Askeladd. And Thorfinn drops his thread. He's like, one day I'm gonna slit. Let me do it this way. One day I'm gonna slit your throat, Askeladd. Askeladd's like, yeah, yeah, that'll happen. He's like, yeah, maybe one day I'll get old and you'll win or something. And so Askeladd shares his thoughts, and we kind of learn that Askeladd has a little bit of learning behind him. He's not, just a warrior, but he talks about how
History.
History, like how the Romans were in this part of the world, and then the Saxons, and he's just kind of reflecting on how life is changing and things are getting older. So, like, we see, that Askeladd is a multidimensional person. He's not just the jaunty like leader of all these like Viking pirates.
Yeah.
And then like we have this flashback to what's going on in the village, and what Ake or Tor has bested the other man, and you just see like the sword plunging through their like through their entire body. So like they're not recovering from that, and like that's the lifestyle that the Vikings live. Like, oh, we're gonna get into a disagreement where one of us is going to die.
Right.
Um,
It actually reminds me quickly. It reminds me of if you've watched House of the Dragon season 1 that came out last year. There's a scene in one of the episodes where there's just like these two guys, and this one person is like just keeps like belittling the other guy, and then eventually the guy just like takes out his sword. He's like, okay, we're gonna duel, and one of them gets killed. So it's just kind of like that mindset. Like, if you're gonna be insulting me constantly, then we're just gonna fight it, and whoever wins whoever wins gets to live, and whoever loses gets to die, and then that's gonna be that. So it's kind of like a different mindset for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and like even they had duels in the time of Alexander Hamilton. Like his son dies in a duel. Like, yeah, live by the sword, die by the sword. I'm not all about that life. I like
no.
I like living here in America. Excuse me. Okay. So towards the end of the chapter, we have a rider. A rider is coming into Askeladd's group of men, and he bears news. He reveals that Thorkel has taken Prince Canute captive. And this is a big reveal. And I want to like highlight in the manga that there's this. So Askeladd is always pretty much drawn the same way. And then after this news, we get this new animation. for Askeladd. I'm gonna show it to the camera here, um, right here,
Oh,
and you'll
right.
see like his face is dark. Askeladd looks like this picture most of the time.
Yeah, like
Okay.
nonchalant, like not doesn't really care.
And then we get this picture of Askeladd, and I think like we're seeing the dark side of Askeladd. He's drawn differently. He looks malicious. He's like ready to pounce.
Mm-hmm.
And directly after he's drawn that way, next scene decapitates the messenger. And again, we get this dark eyes, like
Right.
he like Askeladd. I almost feel like Askeladd's in like another place.
Mm.
He's deep in his own mind, and
Right.
he is acting out something that is so like sin driven, like this greed, because
Right.
we're about to learn a plan, we're about to learn why he has decapitated this writer, but
Right.
like he is so deep in his sin right here, that he is like a different person than he normally is, but I mean this is a core piece of Askeladd, and you just kind of see it excited here. Um, Askeladd is greedy. He wants money, and so the big plan that he reveals to his men, and like this shows like his strength as a leader. And then like again, you have like this animation of him yelling at his men, and he's still got that dark thing going on around his eyes, and he's like, "You better listen up. We're gonna go, and we're not getting any help, and we're gonna get Prince Canute, and we're gonna ransom him back for a lot of money." And like that's his only motivation. He just wants that money. Like that's what Askeladd wants, and he decapitates a person, no hesitation, because if that person survives, they might go tell someone else, and that's going to interfere with Askeladd getting paid. So he doesn't want to have that happen. So he decapitates him, cuts off that thing, and he's like, "We are going now. We are doing this now."
Right.
So Askeladd is like, he's all nonchalant, but when he like wants to step up and lead, he will do it, and he does it heartlessly. He is not messing around.
Yep.
Because like most of the time he's just so nonchalant.
Mm-hmm.
But here, you see that dark side of him come out,
Right.
and he like gets the like men all riled up, and they're on board. They want to get paid too, even though it's going to be difficult odds with their 100 men versus Thorkel's. The S was appropriate there. Thorkel's army of 500 men. Um, 5 to 1. That is
Right.
that is what we call outnumbered.
Yes.
So yeah, and that's where we end the Ragnarok chapter.
Yes. Yeah.
You
It's a
want
good
to
chapter.
pick it up with?
I liked kind of getting the little details from, because yeah, Askeladd is a very multi-dimensional character. Like he is the nonchalant, but he's really dark. But he knows his history, and he knows like things that came before. And it's said that those who don't remember history are doomed to repeat it. So Askeladd might be a very, while he may be very dark and cunning and ruthless, seems like he's got some wisdom, and he's good at thinking up plans, and he's very quick on his feet. So yeah, I really do like Askeladd as a character, even though he's not a good character, but I just like him as a character.
Yeah,
If that makes
yeah, for
sense.
sure. Yeah, I like Thorkel's, and Thorkel. It was not appropriate there. I like Thorkel, even though he's like, he's not a good person.
Well, we don't really know that he's like a bad person.
Well,
He's just fighting against the Danes. He hasn't necessarily done anything that's like, I mean, besides like killing people on the battlefield, I guess. But
yeah, I guess, but yeah, we've talked about that, and we still haven't like come to a definitive, like should we be doing that? I feel like it's
true.
admissible by God, but I don't know
Right.
where it says that in the Bible, so we can't
Well,
say definitively.
yeah. I mean that, like the difference, like in the Old Testament, whenever the Israelites are in wars and stuff, like those are like righteous battles like guided by God, because those groups of people were doing evil in the eyes of the Lord, and so he was using like Israel as his people to like exact justice upon those other people. So it's kind of a like in this scenario, like there's no, like God's not telling one side to do something or not. So that's maybe a difference here. Anyways, let's jump to the last chapter, chapter 21. Hopefully we get through this one quickly. Basically, we open up in this chapter and we're going with Thorkel, and he is kind of just going along with all of his troops, and they've captured Canute and his advisor here, and they're just talking about, stuff, food, all sorts of different things. And it comes up about like they're talking about pillaging, and they're talking about women, and they're saying some things about like, well, I wouldn't want to convert to Christianity because they're too pushy. And this is kind of another section where I have with my major theme of just like the inferiority of Christianity. So I'll just read some of the quotes that they have in here throughout this section. So I had already said that we won't make the switch because they're too pushy. And then we have Gabe's quote where they're like, I saw a wooden statue of that fellow Jesus in the London chapel. It looks like a pansy. And then later on they have, ain't that the truth? Nothing but skin and bones. One swing from Thor's hammer would pound him flat. And then it says, what good is he in a battle? Now I hear he were a wizard, walking on water, making bread out of thin air. Awful boring magic, if you ask me. I mean, the gods of Asgard all have flying horses. Exactly. I like Odin and Thor. They're much better. So just kind of this discussion about like the differences between the Vikings' perception of Christianity versus what their own belief system is. And and we also have, Prince Canute sitting in the wagon. He's kind of chained up, and he's supposedly a Christian, as mentioned by his father, because he had a Christian upbringing. And so he's just kind of listening to all this, and I don't even think we've heard him talk yet. Is that correct? So he's just kind of sitting there.
He's just very stoic. Yeah.
And his advisor is kind of like, you're dishonoring him and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, but for this major theme, just kind of thinking about like, like we're as Christians, like we're supposed to be able to. The Bible passage here I have is from 1 Peter 3, and it's about like giving a defense of the gospel. I'll just read this section, and this is one of the passages that I have on my website for like Pages of Light, just like the theme of what I want to try to kind of build with this platform and this brand is. So it says, now who is there to harm you if you are zealous for what is good? But even if you should suffer for righteousness' sake, you will be blessed. Have no fear of them, nor be troubled, but in your hearts honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. Yet do it with gentleness and respect, having a good conscience, so that when you are slandered, those who revile you, your good behavior in Christ may be put to shame. For it is better to suffer for doing good, if that should be God's will, than for doing evil. And so it seems like Canute might be trying to do some of this where he's not trying to, like he's not speaking to them. He's trying to be respectful. And he's just kind of like almost like kind of taking it. Like he's not really giving a defense just yet. So maybe I'll look forward to like whenever he starts to talk, and like if he has any like kind of rebuttal to what they have to say. So that's maybe what I'll be looking for in the second half of this book, or maybe in a future book later on. But yeah, just as Christians, like we're going to be in situations where things like this are going to be happening. Like people are going to be saying things about Christianity that we know are not true, or they're going to be painting in Christianity in a poor light, or going to be talking ill about other Christians who you know, or maybe who are friends of yours. And so you have a choice of like how you're going to react in those situations. Like, are you going to act rashly? Are you going to be like Ascalon and lashed out in anger and violence? Or are you going to be gentle and respectful, and do things with a good conscience? And so just kind of a thought for like how we as Christians should respond to people whenever they try to talk down to Christianity or put it like take the Lord's name in vain, or things like that. Just how do you respond in those situations? So yeah, that was kind of a major theme that I noticed in this scene.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any thoughts or comments on there?
I said a lot of it at the beginning, just like how incredible the story of Christ actually is,
Right.
and how uh, like is how countercultural is it to like my life, the ultimate power in the universe comes, and what does he do? He just serves people, and that's how
Right.
he wins, and like we're here to serve each other and do the right thing and to support one another. Like I've you know we want to harmonize with God. So God is the ultimate good in the universe, and like the more we are like him and the more we harmonize like our actions to like what he would want us to do
Right.
and generate like good in the world, it's just so countercultural. Everyone is about like, I'm going to do this for my reasons, I want to do this for this reason, and just not trying to be like self-sacrificing. So
Yeah.
yeah, Christianity is looked down on in the world, and that's really sad because if you're not following Christ, then you're not making it to heaven.
Right. Yes, indeed. Yeah. So jumping back into the story here, um, yeah, we just have some scenes here where they're talking about like Valhalla and what they have to do to get into Valhalla, and so that's kind of another major theme that we'll revisit that at the end after we're done with the book discussion to finish off. But towards after they're done with kind of this with this discussion, there's like this weird scene where they're, I guess, is this like a priest that they have here that's like kind of chained up?
He's like Canute, like right next to Canute. Yeah, this is a funny, weird scene for sure.
I didn't really get the point of what they were. What was was this just like show that there's like a crazy kind of priest Christian guy? He's like, I can see him, Father above, God in heaven. Is that you? Um,
And he's got crazy eyes,
yeah, he
like to
says,
rival Thorfinn's crazy eyes.
right, yeah, and he says, show me the answers to my delusions. Show me your love. So he's like admitting that they're delusions in a way. So it's like kind of interesting. Um, So yeah, I don't know what they were trying to convey here. Maybe they were just kind of showing. Well, I think I think he's had a bunch to drink. Maybe that was their point. Like he's a drunk priest
Well,
Christian
here,
guy.
I mean, he's supposed to be sober here.
No, but then
And apparently,
he says, who's greater, your Jesus or our gods? And then he said, whoever created liquor. So I think he is just
well,
supposed to be drunk.
yeah. Well, so yeah,
And then they say
yeah. It's
alcohol
a
is
weird.
salvation.
Yep. I think I don't know.
Yeah, it was just kind of a weird scene, I guess. But I guess it just kind of like the Vikings are all saying these things about Christianity, and then you have this crazy priest who's a Christian who's drunk and having delusions and saying that the God who's greater is the one who created liquor. So it's just kind of like feeding into their perception of what of the inferiority of Christianity compared to the Norse gods. So yeah. After that, they're kind of done with their talking because now we're going to get some action and stuff. And there's kind of another army that has laid in wait for the Thorkel and his company here, and they know that they have Canute being held hostage, and so they're going to kind of surround them and say, "We want our hostages back." And it's kind of funny because Thorkel's like, "All right, there you go. They can just have them," and so he just like kind of sends them on their way. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I guess we have them. And this advisor guy is like, okay, now we're just going to walk away and we're not going to fight. But Thorkel is like goading them into attacking. And I found that this is an interesting quote. He's like, this advisor guy, he says, no, don't even think about it. We must leave. And then this guy says, but as a warrior, I find no reason to retreat. It's like they're all Vikings and Danish, and that's kind of like in their in their DNA as like that's part of their culture. Like if you're challenged to a fight, like you're supposed to accept that and you know take on
And
that
test
fight.
your strength.
Right, exactly.
You know, at one point they said like, you know, the stronger the enemy, the better. You know,
Right,
I want to prove that I'm the strongest and I'm the best.
right. And so I think like you're seeing the difference between like the Christian perspective on decision making and what the Vikings are doing, because I think this advisor guy is also a Christian, like Prince Canute is, and so that's why you're having him, making a different decision compared to the Viking person, because the Viking guy needs to have the battle just because they asked to have a battle, and I guess that's a good enough reason, and so a battle ensues and they go crazy, and we get to see Thorkel go just absolutely insane. He's got these like dual wielding axes. Just some cool drawings and depictions here of the action. It is pretty brutal, like people getting chopped in half, decapitations, like helmets getting smashed in, all sorts of stuff happening here. And then at the very end of this chapter here, we have Askeladd and his little group who are kind of watching what's going on, and then they have decided that they're going to they're going to create a fire in this forest, but we don't know exactly what their full plan is. We just kind of see them starting it, and so that's where the chapter ends, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens in the next episodes here. I don't know. Any thoughts on this section before we move to the bonus chapter real quick?
Yeah, so the question is, who's going to take down Thorkel?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question.
Or does he survive?
Maybe. If anyone's gonna take him down, I think it's gonna be Thorfinn, so Thorfinn can get his.
Not Askeladd.
Maybe, I don't know. An Askeladd versus Thorkel duel would be pretty sweet, I have to say. Because actually, we did already get to see a Thorfinn versus Thorkel, so it would be cool to see an Askeladd versus Thorkel. That'd be a good matchup because they're both very good fighters.
Yeah, they're both cunning. Stronger than Thorfinn, right?
Right.
So it'd be a good matchup.
Yeah. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. And then at the very end of this kind of book, there's a little bonus story with Ylva. So I actually kind of like this, just kind of getting to see
Me too. I did too.
It's kind of like a bonus thing of what's happening back in Iceland now that Thors has died, and just kind of like how the family is reacting. And kind of the basic point of this story is that Ylva is like, I'm just going to read what I wrote here. So like she's burying herself in her work and busyness just to avoid, mourning and thinking about the loss of her own father. And so she's like doing all these things. She's picking up the water, and she's like carrying like these massive loads of water, and she's feeding the sheep. She's cooking the food. She's, milking the cows. And then she's like, Mom, there's a whale. And so she goes out like whale hunting and harpooning. And she is able to get the best portion because she speared the whale first and all this stuff. So she's extremely capable, as we can see. But she's doing all of these things so that she doesn't have to think about her dad not being there anymore. And at the very end, we kind of have her mom. I don't remember her mom's name. Was it Helga? That's not.
Yes.
It was Helga?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought that was wrong.
Yeah, Thor's was, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it is right there on the next page. It says Helga and Ylva right there. But she's like, you have to stop. You have to just go to bed. And she's trying to do this weaving thing. And she says, I'm fine. I'm not tired. She just kind of takes this thing out of her hand, and she has tears in her eyes because she finally there's no more work to do, so she has to just think about something else, and the thing that goes to her mind is her dad. And I think this is definitely like a true thing that happens in the world, is like something tragic might happen, and then people react to it in different ways. Some people just bury themselves in their work, and they bury themselves in something else, some other vice that they are addicted to or something like that. And so this is just kind of how she's coping with what happened to her dad. And she doesn't have her brother either, even though she like teased her brother a lot and they didn't really get along. But at the end of the day, like they were still blood, and like she still loved him, I would assume. So just not having either of them there anymore is difficult for both of them, and so it's kind of good just to see that they can, mourn together and be a family. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on this little bonus scene?
No, I think you again just like really astute observation that the way that she is dealing with this is just through busyness. And I've seen this happen in people. Like I had a friend who I'm just like, you literally are just like jumping from activity to activity, and it wasn't like
Right.
sometimes it's like they're running from things that like are in their past,
Right.
like in this case, like death of a parent, I think was part of it. Um, but like it, yeah, I feel like you just have to, if you want to develop yourself as a person, like I just feel like sometimes you just need to slow it down and like have
Mm-hmm.
some time for reflection. Like people
Right.
do not take enough time. Like it is like they're too busy doing things to ask themselves, am I pushing my life in the direction that I want it to go?
Right.
Instead, it's just like, well, after this, I have to do this. And after that, I'm going to do this. And then,
Right.
and a lot of times people just get so caught up in the flow of life that they don't take the time to sit back and say, let me think about this. Like, where am I pushing myself in my life? Like, where am I going
Right.
with this?
Yeah.
So I just thought that was really astute that you saw that. And yeah, that's something that people do all the time.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I think even just like now, like this time in history, there is so many distractions and things that we can use to just distract ourselves endlessly to avoid doing things that we maybe should be doing, or even just like, you're not taking time to just reflect on, like things that have happened to you in your life, or like how, like making big decisions, or like I definitely get caught up in this, like, like you can have like a million different podcasts and you can always have headphones in and listening to something, um, but if you're always like listening to things, like you're never, like if you're always taking in information, like you're never able to like think about the information that you're taking in and like how do you apply that to your life. So like just this relentless pursuit of like information and knowledge can sometimes be like a detriment if you're not actually taking the time to uh, reflect on how you should, maybe make a life change, or how you can, do something better to make other people's lives better instead of just trying to advance your own life. Um, so yeah, I mean, I can personally, I definitely get caught up in that because there's so many things that need to happen, things that need to be done, like at work and at home, and just like with things that I personally want to accomplish, like with this YouTube channel and things. Like there's always things that I can be doing, and you kind of always feel like you're never doing enough things, and you're always like you're never doing things to the best of your ability. But I feel like sometimes it's just not, it's just good to say, I don't need to do anything right now. I can just sit. I can just, maybe be with God. I can read the Bible, read a chapter of the Bible and just pray and just be present with the Lord. And I feel like that's something that a lot of people, myself included, kind of just don't focus on, and they just kind of lose that part of their life, and there's not a time to just sit and be silent and present with God. And yeah, so I'm speaking to myself in that situation. So I don't know if you have a similar experience or not, but yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Just getting caught up. I mean, that's the way I felt. Like like other times in my life, but like definitely in college.
Right.
Like it was. I went to Penn State. It was a they called it like the football school with a drinking problem or something. I don't know.
That's probably a
Anyway,
lot of schools actually, but yeah.
yeah. But like it was just like, okay, after this, like I'm gonna go to this party, and next weekend I'm going to this frisbee tournament, and then
Sure.
just constant activities, like hanging out with friends, partying, like going to
Yep.
class, doing the frisbee tournament. Going home for the holidays, like can't wait to get back, see my friends, hang out,
Mm-hmm.
um, and just like never like stopping and reflecting on my life. And um, yeah, I got some bad grades in college, and then I pulled it together. Got straight A's like my super
Oh
senior
man.
year.
Let me tell you, I
Yeah.
had some bad grades in college. Some really bad grades. So much so that, I went in as a chemistry major. Okay.
Okay.
Came out as a marketing major graduate. So I had a chemistry class. I think it was organic chemistry. And
OChem.
yeah,
Watch out.
OChem, that's rough. Um, but this will be forever embedded into my head. I got a 24 out of 100 on a midterm paper.
Yeah, that's low.
So
That is
that
that
I
is low.
that was the point where I was like, okay, something's not working out here. I need to make a change, whether that's drastically altering my study habits for organic chemistry, or I just need to bail and do something else. And that's what I did. So,
I bailed on being a math teacher. That's how I became
all
a
right.
social studies teacher.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll avoid talking about our college woes in the next few podcasts.
Yeah, it's all right.
um, cool. Yeah. So that's the book discussion. Let us know what you thought about this section of the book. If you had any scenes that really spoke to you or stood out to you. I just wanted to end. There was one last major theme that I wanted to mention before we wrapped up, and that's just like the difference between works-based salvation and like what Christianity is. Like, so there's the difference between believing in yourself versus believing in Jesus, and this is very apparent when they have the discussion between the Vikings and the Christians, and just the differences between the religions. And so at the beginning here, we have an opening quote at the very beginning of this book when it says, "When asked what he believed in, a Viking once said, 'I believe in my own strength and nothing else.'" And that's interesting because that quote is the exact opposite of what Christianity is. For Christians, we're believing in or not believing in our own strength at all, because we know our own strength is not enough to get us to perfection, which is the standard for salvation. And so instead, we're believing on the strength of Jesus and his life. And so just that complete 180 of the Vikings' belief system versus the Christians' belief system. So the Vikings, they believe in themselves, and the Christians believe in Jesus. Um,
Hmm.
and so we have another few other quotes here from throughout the book where Ascalon at one point says, "Then get to work. Only those who do their jobs on the battlefield get the rewards that they desire. That's the life of a warrior." And so that's like twofold for Ascalon. You get the rewards because you get the money in the here and now, but it's also you get the rewards you desire in the afterlife because your performance on the battlefield and how you die in battle determines your outcome in the afterlife in Valhalla. So that's a kind of like a twofold truism from Ascalon there from the Viking religious perspective.
Hmm.
And then later on, towards the end of this section, we have Thorkel's quote where he says, "Only those who live true in battle and die true in battle will be allowed to cross Bifrost and dwell within Valhalla and Asgard. How did you fight and how did you die? That's what matters. The stronger the foe, the better." And so yeah, we kind of already talked about that quote earlier on in the book discussion. But then kind of there's a kind of a next scene, I think, where Canute is. It's actually not Canute. It's Canute's advisor. I don't remember his name. The guy, like the bald-headed guy.
Yeah.
So he says, "You're a child, Thorkel. You know nothing." And whenever I read that section or that line, that just reminded me of that passage in 1 Corinthians in chapter 13. This is 11 through 12, and it says, "When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I have been fully known." So I think I've used that passage in another podcast, but it's a great passage because, like in this scenario, like Canute's advisor here is saying, like, your worldview is like a childish worldview, like you're relying on your own strength and your own abilities, but the Christian knows that those things aren't enough to get you into the afterlife and to have eternal life through Jesus. And so it's kind of like a childish worldview, but then the Christian kind of sees like a bigger picture of, how you're supposed to act in the world. And so, yeah, that was kind of my, the last kind of major theme that I saw that really stood out to me in this section here. So yeah, there you go. Any thoughts on that before we wrap up?
Yeah, workspace. Again, I'm going to go back to a Mike Winger thing. I've just been on a binge of his 20 questions, and I've clicked on some of his other content, and one of them was him refuting like the Roman Catholic Church and like how,
right,
like he asked like a priest one time, like a Roman Catholic priest, if he would go to heaven, and the priest said like, I don't know, because there's all these like variables in like your salvation, and
right,
like if you miss like church, like that's a variable, and then like if you're not doing like God's will or doing enough works, like that's a variable. And like that is such a like, the peace of God that passes understanding does not jive with like, oh, like today I might be going to like hell, like
right,
like I might be destined for hell today. Like
right,
like the whole point of Christianity, like the gospel, is that Jesus has died for your sins, and that you get the ticket into heaven.
right,
And like you're supposed to like live in that knowledge and that truth, and just let it wash over you and make you feel like loved by the Lord, and like
right,
you want to be like the Lord and harmonize your thoughts and actions to what he's doing.
right,
And then like, and that's why he does this whole video like on refuting why, the Roman Catholic approach is just not everything they believe is biblical.
right,
And then, his constant thing is just go back to the Bible. Like if you're not sure about something, don't take your priest's word for it. You go to the Bible, you read it, and you decide for yourself. Like the Bible should be the ultimate thing that you are weighing, that's guiding your life.
yeah.
So yeah, the works-based salvation is just don't do it, guys. It's not a fun way to go. Just know that God's grace has got you.
You can't work enough. It's not possible.
Yep. Not possible to earn your way into heaven.
Yeah. And we have like assurance of salvation. There's a passage somewhere, I don't remember the reference, but it says somewhere where like you're sealed until the day of redemption. So like you have a conversion and you believe, and your soul is sealed. So you're kept in the Lord until the day of redemption. So it's a good reminder for Christians that they have assurance of salvation, so they don't need to worry like, oh, did I do enough things today? Did I do enough good things this month? You don't have to keep tabs on yourself. But that's not to say that you can just be like, I'm a Christian, I can do whatever I want and it's fine. Like if you have a genuine conversion, then you will want to do those good works, as it's mentioned in James, faith without works is dead. So if you have a true conversion, then you'll be wanting to do those good works. And if you're not doing the good works, then you should feel some sort of conviction in your heart about, I'm not living up to the standard that I have set for myself when I'm becoming a Christian. And as you're walking with God, like the Holy Spirit should convict you in those things where you can tell in your own heart that you're not measuring up to the standard that God calls you to. So yeah, good word there. And I think that's a good place to end it. Yeah, good episode, everybody. Next episode is going to be finishing book 2 of Vinland Saga, which I don't remember the chapter numbers, but I will tell you right now, it is 22 to 28 plus bonus material potentially, if it's worth talking about. So that is what we will be doing in our next episode in 2 weeks. We will see you there. If you want to read along with us, please do. Make sure you guys check out our websites and social media. Go follow us on YouTube and subscribe there so you can check out the video version if you would like. And yeah, leave us a review on your podcast app, particularly Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I think those are where you can do reviews. And that's going to do it. Any last thoughts, Gabe, before we call it quits?
We'll see you in the next one.
That's right. All right, so guys, remember to keep reading and to share the gospel with somebody this week, and we will see you in the next episode. See ya.
Bye. Bye.